lion there and not a cat. So this is someone who has unrealistically low self-esteem. This is not a weak, terribly weak, frail, starving, emaciated cat. I think this is a kitten, actually, but we'll call it a cat for our purposes. And it's not a full-grown adult male lion and all the power that entails. Okay, so this, you can see where high self-esteem is just as unrealistic as low self-esteem. And when it comes to self-esteem, everyone has a self-serving bias that explains positive and negative events. And the question arises here, is it possible that we can all be better than average? There's people who are really good, and then there are average people. And there's never anyone who's lower down. If you're talking to a group of employees, and you guys are employees now, or as I will say to a group of students, some of you did very well on the test, and the rest of you didn't do quite as well. This is the implication that nobody did very poorly. Always as a teacher, you're trying not to affect someone's self-esteem. Someone might have had something going on in their life, or they might have just not studied. That might have a reason why they did poorly, but you don't want to call them out in public. The self-serving bias also explains the unrealistic optimism that I can change overnight. It also explains false consensus and uniqueness. False consensus, the belief that everyone agrees with you. You say something in a crowd of people and one or two people kind of nod and you are left with the impression everyone agrees with you. And false uniqueness, the idea that there's something incredibly special about you. We all know in a world of 7 billion people, most of us are extraordinarily average, are very much like the person beside us demographically, okay? As I teach students, when I teach comparison and contrast, everyone is the same and everyone is different. And it's real easy to explain how everyone is the same. This self-serving bias focuses on how unique I am, how special I am, how awesome I am usually, or how terribly evil I am, if you have more of a criminal implication, which helps explain the self-serving bias, and it reflects on self-esteem and the self-serving bias. Illusory optimism is a good example of this. Most couples marry feeling confident of long-term love. Actually, in individualistic cultures, we'll talk about what that means. Half of marriages fail. Okay, everyone believes that they're going to be the exception to the rule. In the case of marriages, it's very easy to believe, to have this what they call illusory optimism. That is optimism that is an illusion, because 50% do make it, and everyone always believes I'm in the 50% because I'm a good person, I'm marrying a good person. We're going to be in that 50% that goes the distance. In the same way, when I run into students whose career plans are to become professional athletes or to become professional entertainers, all of them will seize upon the exception that proves the rule. Yes, I know it's very difficult, teacher. I know it's difficult to become a professional soccer player, to become the next Lionel Messi from Albania. I'm not sure who the most successful Albanian soccer player has ever been, but I'm sure there's been Albanians who played in Italy before. I've just never heard of them. I was watching a game with some Turkish friends one time, and they pointed out that one of the players there was an Albanian who was playing in Turkey. So clearly there have been Albanians who succeeded in the international field of playing soccer, but there were very few of them because there were very few professional soccer players at all as a percentage of the population. But everyone has that optimism that what they're doing is not crazy. We also have the spotlight effect, that is a self-serving bias. We tend to see ourselves in the spotlight and think that others are paying more attention to us than they really are. And the way that I always explain this to my students is the Academy Awards. We all know what the Academy Awards are. They're for the best movie and the best actor and the best actress and so on and so forth, best director. Well, everyone has this weird idea that you are playing in a movie and that you are the lead actor, and the way you play your role in life is to be the lead actor in the movie that is your life, the life of Mustafa, the life of Muhammad, when this is not true. Hollywood and television in general has given us this impression. Most people are the supporting cast in the movie that is their life. They are not even important people in their own lives. They may be important to other people, but their immediate little universe does not rotate around them. They are constellations in a universe that rotates around something else, whether it's the state, whether it's their religion, whether it's an important person in their life. Okay, sometimes the husband or the wife is more important in a relationship. And then once their children are born, the parents start rotating around their children because the children become the most important thing in their universe, I hope. False modesty, presenting a different self than they feel, negative comments of self. This is pretending to be bashful or embarrassed by a skill that you have. Self-handicapping, sabotaging your own chances for success. I remember as a child, there were all these t-shirts at the time. T-shirts were very popular when I was a child. I'm sure they're popular now, but there were these places called t-shirt shops, and you could go in and buy whatever color of t-shirt you wanted and have whatever decal that you thought was funny or interesting put on that t-shirt, and then you would wear the t-shirt with the decal. It was a way of designing your own clothes. It was very popular 15 or 20 years ago. So when I was a teenager, I remember someone wearing a shirt that said, there was all the, I'm number one, and I forget what I'm number two said, but one of them said, I'm number three, I don't try at all. People who are afraid to compete with others, there's a promotion. There's 3 of you who work in this department, and 1 of you is going to be promoted. Please let me know what your plan would be with that promotion. And 1 of you chooses not to participate because you're afraid to lose. So this is sabotaging your chance at promotion. It may be that the boss wants to promote you, but he needs to see some indication from you that you would be willing to take that promotion and the additional responsibilities that the promotion entails. And so the person who ends up getting promoted is maybe not the best person for the job, but it is someone who has expressed a desire to be promoted. So this is someone who doesn't get promoted because he or she has chosen not to participate. I don't believe in that. And impression management, self-presentation, expressing and behaving to create a favorable and ideal impression. This is what you do during job interviews. You're letting people think you are a certain way, and you may not be lying, but you may be overemphasizing characteristics that you believe will help you get the job, because we all know in a job interview, people don't have any idea who you really are when you walk out of the room, and you just hope you've succeeded in creating a good impression. And self-monitoring, the awareness of how one presents the self in social settings and adjust performance for the desired impression. Okay, there's certain behaviors that are appropriate at a party versus at, let's say the opening of a new part of the building where you work. They're both social occasions, they're both done with, there's cake and cookies and things like that, but the party is much more informal, and the one that is somewhat work-related is much more formal. You are aware of your social self at that point and how you present yourself to others around you. Of course, all of these things are variable across cultures. There's general overall differences between Western and Eastern cultures. And when we say Western and Eastern here, we aren't talking about Christianity and Islam, which may be the impression of folks sitting in this room. We are talking about predominantly Caucasian cultures versus predominantly Asian cultures. And by Asia, I'm talking Southeast Asia, China, Japan, Korea, to a certain extent Vietnam, and eventually we start running into Muslim countries. But not based on religion, but important to remember that when we talk about the split between Islam and Christianity, that they're still Abrahamic religions. A lot of the underpinnings and assumptions of how people are going to act are based on those religions and things they have in common. And what implications might the difference between Western and Eastern cultures have on on people's, in this case, or a person's self-concept. If we remember back to the slide that had the couple that was getting married who believed they were going to last, well, they were Asian American, I assume. They were certainly wearing North American wedding clothes, but they were people who were part of the Asian diaspora. We have a very large percentage of people in North America, especially on the West Coast, who are from Asian countries and often have been in North America for more than 100 years. So culture in the self, the independent self, the sense of oneself is bounded, unitary, and separate from the social context. So your sense of yourself as an individual, independent of your family, of your religion, of your society, versus the interdependent self, the sense of self as flexible, variable, and connected to the social context. So for those of you who are Muslims, there is some overlap here between independent and interdependent self, and certainly not necessarily just, I think it's just Albanians and I think just Turkish educated Albanians here today. I don't believe there's any Turkish students in this class. But we start seeing a little bit of overlap, and I can talk about sort of, in English we talk about the Far East and the Near East. You're all familiar with the term the Middle East. Near East has largely dropped away and been replaced by the Middle East. In the Middle East, we generally mean the Arabic world or the Islamic world, because we don't consider Turkish people anymore to be Arabic, although at one time we did. And we don't consider Iranians to be Arabic, although at one time we did. Continuing, variability across cultures. So in independent cultures, they stress